Hey there, flight enthusiasts. Ever looked up at the sky and wondered just what's going on up there? Did you know that airspace is a lot more than just empty space above our heads? In fact, airspace is an incredibly complex and regulated part of our world that plays a crucial role in aviation. Without it, air travel wouldn't be possible. Buckle up, because today, I'm taking you on an aerial adventure filled with jaw-dropping facts about airspace that you probably didn't know. Let's soar right in. 1. The basics of airspace. First things first, let's talk about what airspace actually is. Airspace is the area of the atmosphere controlled by a country, and it's essential for keeping air traffic organized and safe. When you hear about airspace, you might just picture the sky as one big empty zone. But in reality, it's divided into different sections, each with its own specific rules. The US, for example, has 5 main classes of airspace: Class A, B, C, D, and E, each one serving a distinct purpose and governed by various regulations. This classification ensures that all kinds of aircraft, from small private planes to massive commercial airliners, can coexist safely in the skies. Class A, for instance, covers the space between 18,000 and 60,000 feet, where you'll find most commercial jets cruising. Below that, Class B surrounds busy airports like JFK or LAX, while Class C covers smaller regional airports. Class D? Well, that's for even smaller airports, but it's still carefully regulated to ensure safety. And Class E? It's essentially the everywhere else of the airspace world, covering most of the sky where no other specific rules apply. Outside the US, countries have their own classifications, but they follow a similar structure to keep things smooth and efficient. Without these rules, air travel would be chaotic and dangerous. 2. Airspace management. Now that we know how airspace is organized, let's talk about who manages it. Enter air traffic controllers, the unsung heroes of aviation. These professionals are responsible for guiding airplanes safely through the sky and ensuring they avoid each other in what can often be incredibly crowded skies. Imagine a highway with no lanes and no stoplights, and you've got a good idea of what air traffic control is up against. But instead of cars, you've got massive planes traveling at speeds of 500 miles per hour or more. Sounds like a lot of pressure, right? It is. Air traffic controllers use a combination of radar, radio communications, and a whole lot of experience to direct traffic. They operate 24/7, constantly monitoring aircraft from the time they take off to the time they land. On an especially busy day, a single controller might be managing up to 100 planes simultaneously. Can you imagine being responsible for that many lives at once? But despite the immense stress, air traffic controllers are masters of multitasking and remain calm under pressure, ensuring that planes stay a safe distance apart at all times. And it's not just about preventing collisions. Air traffic controllers also ensure that flights stick to their designated flight paths, manage delays, and deal with weather-related disruptions. Think of them as the conductors of a giant, invisible orchestra, where every plane is an instrument that needs to be perfectly in sync with the others. Without them, the skies would be chaotic, and air travel, as we know, wouldn't be possible. 3. The busy skies. Speaking of busy, did you know that over 100,000 flights take to the skies each and every day? That's about 8 million flights every year. It might be hard to picture just how many planes are up in the air at any given time, but imagine the sky above you as a vast highway system, with planes crisscrossing every which way, all at different altitudes and heading in different directions. The busiest airspace in the world is found over the eastern United States, particularly in the areas surrounding New York City and Washington, D.C. On any given day, this airspace handles more air traffic than entire countries do in a year. That's a mind-boggling amount of coordination happening behind the scenes to ensure all those planes stay on course and arrive at their destinations safely. What makes this even more incredible is the sheer variety of aircraft sharing the same sky. You've got commercial airliners, military jets, private planes, helicopters, drones, and even space-bound rockets all operating in different parts of the atmosphere. And despite the increasing number of flights every year, air travel remains one of the safest modes of transportation, thanks in large part to the systems in place to manage these busy skies. But with the rise of new technologies like autonomous drones and flying taxis, airspace is only going to get more crowded in the future, and managing it will become even more complex. 4. Altitude zones. All right, let's climb a little higher and talk about altitude. Did you know that commercial jets typically cruise between 30,000 and 40,000 feet? At this height, the air is thin enough to reduce drag and allow planes to fly more efficiently, while still being thick enough to support stable flight. But what happens if we keep going up? At altitudes above 60,000 feet, we enter the realm of specialized aircraft like the U-2 spy plane. This aircraft operates in the stratosphere, a region far above where commercial planes fly, and is used for high-altitude reconnaissance missions. The U-2 is designed to fly so high that its pilots have to wear spacesuit-like gear to survive the near-vacuum conditions. And even higher than that, above 100,000 feet, is where rockets in space-bound vehicles operate. This altitude marks the edge of space, a frontier few aircraft can reach. It's fascinating to think that while most of us only experience the skies at a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, there's an entire world of aviation happening miles above our heads in the extreme conditions of the upper atmosphere. 5. Restricted airspace. Now let's talk about restricted airspace. If you've ever flown on a commercial flight and looked at the in-flight map, you may have noticed areas marked as no-fly zones. These are sections of airspace where civilian aircraft are prohibited from entering, usually for security or safety reasons. Restricted airspace is often found around military installations, government buildings, or other sensitive locations. One of the most famous restricted airspace zones is over Area 51, the highly classified U.S. Air Force Base in Nevada. Any unauthorized aircraft entering restricted airspace could face serious consequences, including being intercepted by military jets. But it's not just military installations that have no-fly zones. During major events like the Super Bowl or a presidential visit, temporary restricted airspace may be established to prevent any unauthorized aircraft from entering the area. Pilots need to be aware of these zones at all times to avoid hefty fines or worse. Even drones are subject to these restrictions, and flying a drone in restricted airspace without permission can lead to legal trouble. So if you're ever flying, whether in a plane or operating a drone, make sure you're aware of the airspace restrictions in your area. 6. Environmental impact. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Air travel contributes nearly 3% of global carbon emissions. While that might not sound like much at first glance, it's a significant amount when you consider the scale of air traffic. The aviation industry is growing rapidly, and with more planes in the sky, the environmental impact continues to rise. Aircraft engines burn fossil fuels, releasing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which contribute to climate change. In response, the industry has been innovating to reduce its carbon footprint. One promising solution is the development of sustainable aviation fuels, SAFs, which are made from renewable resources like algae, waste, and even plants. These fuels have the potential to significantly reduce the carbon emissions produced by flights. Another exciting innovation is the rise of electric and hybrid electric aircraft. While we're still in the early stages of this technology, the potential for all-electric planes could transform short-haul flights in the near future. Some companies are even developing electric vertical takeoff and landing (eVTOL) aircraft, which could revolutionize urban air mobility. The aviation industry recognizes that the sky is not just the limit, it's also a shared responsibility. Steps are being taken to make air travel more sustainable. 7. Trivia time. All right, time for some trivia to wrap things up with a bit of fun. Airspace might seem like a technical topic, but it's packed with some really fascinating nuggets of information. Let's kick off with this mind-blower. The longest air corridor in the world stretches an incredible 8,600 miles from Los Angeles to Singapore. This epic route takes around 18 hours to fly non-stop, making it one of the longest commercial flights you can take. Imagine being in the air for almost an entire day. Definitely not for the faint of heart. Now, here's another fun fact. The world's first international airspace agreement was signed in 1944 during the Chicago Convention. This agreement laid the groundwork for modern air traffic management, allowing planes to travel safely across national borders. Before that, the idea of flying between countries was, well, a bit like the Wild West. Every country was in charge of their own sky, but there weren't universal rules about how to share airspace. Thanks to the Chicago Convention, we now have a structured and cooperative approach to managing international air traffic. And get this, did you know that the concept of flight levels, the different altitudes planes cruise at, was developed to minimize collisions and turbulence between aircraft? Planes flying in the same direction are staggered at different altitudes, while those flying in opposite directions are assigned separate altitude layers. This stacked approach reduces the chance of accidents and keeps the skies orderly, no matter how busy they get.